All right, you crazy kids still have me cracking up. Your Roblox antics. All right, antics. That's the word I'm looking for. Okie dokie. What's happening? We are reading Lois Lowry's The Willoughbys. All right, recap. What's happening? It's an awful family. Mom and dad are terrible. They're mean. They don't like their children. Their children are therefore terrible, right? Because that's who they're learning it from. And they don't like their parents. They both are trying to set up a thing so that they get rid of each other. The parents want to just abandon the children, and the children have gone to where do they go? They went to a travel agency, and they have slid a brochure under the door for a cruise because they want their parents out of here. Now, there was a little bit of a fumble in the plan, though, because the parents, yes, indeed, took the bait and they are leaving, but they didn't leave the kids alone. They got the kids a nanny. So we just had the nanny was just hired. Parents didn't even wait around, right? Like they got in the taxi and left when the nanny got there, who they just hired. They don't know anything about her, and neither do we. I'm sure we will learn way more about that. There was also an incident where somebody left a baby on the steps because they were like, a family lives here. You'll take care of this baby. And they didn't. They didn't take care of the baby. The little girl, Jane, really wanted the baby because it had cute curls. And she was like, we can keep it. It's cute. It's got cute curls. And then the mom cut off the curls. She was like, oh, no more curls. So then Jane was like, meh, never mind. I don't want it anymore. And so then they took it and dropped it off at some old dude's house. And they're going to wait and see what happens there. So that was pretty funny. I thought that was pretty hysterical. But again, they're awful, vile people. Let's see what happens. This one is called Nanny Prepares Porridge, Chapter 6. Your room smells horrid, Jane said at breakfast, stirring her bowl of oatmeal as she looked at the nanny. I could smell it when I came down the stairs. I could too, said Barnaby A. I had to use my asthma inhaler. It smells toxic, Tim pointed out. And by the way, what is this hideous porridge you are serving us? Didn't our parents tell you that they only feed us eggs Benedict for breakfast or blueberry pancakes with whipped cream? They did not, Jane said, pleased at the forcefulness of her own voice. They always gave us hard-boiled eggs for breakfast. Sometimes the yellow part had turned green. Tim glared at Jane, and she resumed stirring. The nanny turned and looked at them. Wearing her flowered apron, she was standing at the stove, stirring the oatmeal with a wooden spoon. I have fumigated my room with insecticide, she told them. On the count of 3, pinch your noses. Like this, she demonstrated, pinching her own nose with her left hand while she continued to stir with her right. 1, 2, 3. The Willoughby children, startled by her command, all pinched their noses. She looked at them. Good, she said. Now, do that when you walk past my room. Otherwise, you will breathe in phenylethylamine carbamate, and then you will die horribly, withering in pain. Look at that word. Phenylmethylcarbamate. I'm assuming some sort of toxic thing. And then you will die horribly, withering in pain. You may release your noses now, she added, noticing that they were still pinching. She spooned oatmeal into the boys' bowls and put them on the table. I have no wish to notify your parents of your deaths. Now eat your oatmeal. It has lots of soluble fiber. We disdain oatmeal, Tim told her. Disdain is like hate. Starve then, the nanny said. I like it if it has raisins, Jane said in a small voice, looking away from Tim's glare. I will add raisins tomorrow morning, the nanny said. Thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate suggestions. Raisins are actually turds, Tim announced. Surprisingly, the other children paid no attention. Maybe a little sprinkling of brown sugar? Barnaby A. said to the nanny after tasting his. Possibly. I'll give it some thought, she told him. Brown sugar is actually, Tim began. Pipe down and eat, the nanny said. Oh, my goodness. Nanny, you interrupted, Jane said nervously. Tim will take away some of your points. Points? Nanny asked. What are points? The children fell silent. They glanced apprehensively at Tim, who was sulkily moving his spoon around in his oatmeal. Well, Barnaby A began, we each start out in the morning with 50 points. Then Tim takes points away if we interrupt, or whine, Jane added, or argue, or obfuscate, or dawdle, or I forget the rest, Barnaby B said. What happens at the end of the day after the points are tallied? Nanny asked with interest. Winner gets hot water in the bathtub, Jane said, and losers have to use the leftover water. It's cold by then, and has soap scum. She gave a little shudder. Winner stays up as late as he wants, Barnaby A added. Losers go to bed at 7. And can't read in bed, Barnaby B added sadly. Also, Jane began to say, the winner. Nanny held up her hand in a stop gesture. I know all I need to know, she announced. You each started out this morning with 50 points? The children nodded. Have you lost any yet? Yes, Jane said. I lost 4 points for yawning when I woke up. It was bad form. I lost 9 for being a weakling and using my asthma inhaler, Barnaby A said. I broke my shoelace, said his twin added. That was 5 points off for clumsiness. Look at your bowls, Nanny commanded. They all did. Surprisingly, 3 of the bowls were empty. 3 of you have eaten all your oatmeal, and so I am giving you 3 each 20 extra points. You, she said, glaring at Tim, are deducting 20 for not even tasting yours. Hastily, Tim took a bite of oatmeal. She relented. All right, she told him, you may have 5 points back, and the rest if you finish it. Tim frowned and began to eat. Maybe Tim has met his match. All right, chapter 7. The Melancholy Tycoon. Oh, I think this is who they left the baby with. Let's read on and find out. Let us turn our attention now to a mansion some distance away from the Willoughbys' tall, thin house. This is the Melanoff mansion, on the porch of which the Willoughby children had not long ago left a baby in a basket. Mr. Melanoff, called Commander Melanoff for no particular reason except that he liked the sound of it, lived in squalor. Squalor is a situation in which there is moldy food in the refrigerator, mouse droppings are everywhere, the waste baskets are overflowing because they have not been emptied in weeks, and the washing machine stopped working months before. Wet clothes within becoming moldy, but a repairman has never been summoned. There is a very bad smell to squalor. Squalor had nothing to do with money. Squalor happens when people are sad, and Commander Melanoff was very sad. He had made a vast fortune by manufacturing candy bars. His factory still existed, and the money kept coming in because people bought his hugely successful confections by the millions. But Commander Melanoff never went to his office anymore. He stayed in his squalorous mansion, where he moped and sulked. He scowled as he ate his stale toast each morning, and he whimpered into his unheated canned soup at lunch. Each evening he dropped tears into the pizza that was delivered to his porch by prearrangement, and each night he went to bed between his unwashed sheets and sobbed into his stained pillow. His mustache, once bristly and important-looking, was now dingy from grime and stiff from dried-up nose drippings. He was sad because he had lost his wife. He had not actually been very fond of her, but it was sad, nonetheless, to be wifeless. He had been a dull, but tidy and meticulous lady who had kept their... Oops, I don't think it said he, because that doesn't make sense. See, I stopped listening to This is a problem that I have sometimes. Sometimes I stop thinking about the words that I'm saying, and then I'm stop reading them right because I'm just reading and I'm not paying attention anymore. I get distracted in my head. So if that happens to you, that's okay. You just have to go back and you have to read again, which is what I'm going to do. He was sad because he had lost his wife. He had not actually been very fond of her, but it was sad, nonetheless, to be wifeless. She had been a dull but tidy and meticulous lady who had kept the house in perfect, almost too perfect order. The commander's true, deep, unending sadness was because he had lost his only child, a small boy, while mother and son had been enjoying, without him, what had promised to be a lovely holiday. Their private railroad car had been buried by an avalanche near an alpine village 6 years before, and crews of workers had been digging ever since through the towering piles of snow, but had not yet uncovered the wreckage. For a long time, Commander Melanoff had received a daily message about the progress of the search. Okay, so let's think about what we just read. Commander Melanoff, who lives in this mansion, which is where they left the baby, lives there all by himself, and he's very sad. And now he's sad not so much because of his wife, who happened to be very neat and tidy and kept everything very clean, but because he also lost his son. And the way that they lost it was that they were on vacation, mom and son, without him. And there was an accident. And so his railroad car got buried in an avalanche. What are the odds? And he has never received, they never found the bodies or anything. They're missing. Okay. And so he had always gotten a message every day of the search. 7 inches today, but a blizzard has halted operations for the time being, one message had reported. Only 2 inches uncovered today due to fog and several unfriendly mountain goats, said another. The messages had come daily for a long time, then less frequently, but even now, after 6 years, were still slipped occasionally through the mail slot in his front door. He had stopped reading them years before. Each morning that a piece of mail with a Swiss postage stamp arrived, he whimpered, picked it up, and added it unopened to the stack in the corner that now reaches an alarming height and had in places been shredded by mice making nests. So he kept getting these messages, right? And then they kept saying that like there was no news. And so after a while he just stopped reading them because he didn't like what he was hearing. Makes sense. I get that. Sometimes he looked mournfully at the stack and realized that his meticulous wife, had she not been lost in such a tragic way, would have sorted it, arranged it alphabetically, filed it by date and size, and perhaps even the color of the stamp. It made him nostalgic to think about how organized he found that he could not recall her name, had been. But enough about sadness. Something had happened, and now Commander Melanoff's life, surprisingly, was about to change. One morning, when he plodded into the hall to pick up the mail, he heard a sound from the porch. Of course there were sounds from the world outside, but this was not the usual sounds of squirrels gnawing on the wooden railings or pigeons strutting about on the rotting floorboards. He was familiar with those sounds and had ignored them for years. What do you think those sounds might have been? Think about what we know and what we've read. If you said maybe it's that beastly baby, I think you might be right. That is my prediction, is that those sounds that he hears is that beastly baby. This sound was different. It was a piteous wail. Commander Melanoff leaned over and poked open the mail slot with his index finger. He peered through and saw something amazing. He saw a stubbly haired baby in a basket. The baby startled out of her pitiful wailing by the sound of the brass slapped to the mail slot opening, looked up and saw a thick, dirty mustache, and above it a tear-filled eye gazing down at her in surprise. She hiccuped and then smiled. Slowly, the door opened. What do you think? Could this possibly be a match? Is it possible? Maybe. I'm going to read one more. Why not? A cryptic communication. Look at this, grumbled Tim. They've survived so far. He was peering at the postcard that had arrived in the morning mail, along with several bills and a poignant little note from a grandparent who was hoping to get a glimpse of the 4 children before they became adults. He had thrown the rest of the mail away, but he had brought the postcard upstairs to the cobwebbed playroom. Now he was scowling at it. Thousands died in an earthquake, but they only got bruised, he said with a groan. We'll never be rid of them at this rate. May I see it? Asked Jane politely. No, it's too distressing for you. Could we? The twins asked in unison. They cringed, knowing the points were deducted for speaking in unison, but Tim, distracted by the postcard, hadn't noticed. Have a quick look, Tim said, and he held it toward them. Barnaby A. was an extremely fast reader. Although Tim whipped the postcard away from him quickly, he had been able to read it. I don't understand the part about the coal bin, he said. What about the coal bin? Barnaby B. asked. I didn't read that far. Yes, what about the coal bin? Asked Jane. I'm very scared of the coal bin. Tim glared at her. 5-point deduction for being a scaredy cat, he announced. I'll read the stupid postcard out loud. Dear ones, Tim read. Though slightly bruised, we have survived quite a lovely earthquake. You may have read the headlines. Thousands killed. Oh my, Jane said sadly. I suppose kittens were killed too. How sad. Shh, Tim told her. And now we're off to kayak a crocodile-infested river. Such fun! They don't know how to kayak, Barnaby A. exclaimed. They never once have kayaked, his twin added. Precisely, Tim said. May I ask a question? Jane asked timidly. Tim, still holding the postcard, nodded. I'm wondering, Jane said, would a crocodile eat a person in one gulp or in chunks? Her 3 brothers all thought for a minute. Chunks, said Barnaby A. Chunks, said Barnaby B. Yes. Large chunks, Tim said decisively, gulping down chunks for his nourishment, but quickly to avoid the taste, the same way we eat Mother's meatloaf. 8, Jane pointed out. Nanny's meatloaf is quite good. Tim glared at her briefly. Continuing, he announced, and he held up the card. We hope the nanny is earning her salary. He read aloud. Now, this next part, he said. I don't understand. Please hide in the coal bin if prospective buyers come to look at the house. What are prospective buyers? I'm scared of the coal bin, Jane said again. Remember when you made me stay down there because I whined and there were rats? I know what it means, Barnaby A. said eagerly, raising his hand so he would be allowed to speak. Yes, we both know, his twin said. We just saw the sign. What sign? Asked Tim. Look outside. It's on a window box. Tim went to the playroom window and looked down at the 2 boxes filled with begonias that were attached to the first floor windows. I see there is some sort of sign, he acknowledged. What does it say? For sale, the twins announced. We're for sale? Jane asked in surprise. No, Dodo, Tim said. Apparently our house is. And it says cheap, Barnaby B. added. So, Tim mused, while we're getting rid of them, they're getting rid of us. Complicated, said Barnaby A. Diabolical, said Barnaby B. Scary, said Jane. Despicable, said Tim. Absolutely despicable. All right, guys, that's going to be it for today. The parents are selling the house right from under them. That's terrible. I told you they're horrible people. All right, have a great weekend, everybody. Be good to each other.